Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a first look at the brand new crown form Zamazenta in the Master League. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community and fellow content creator Schmeedy, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, when Zamazenta becomes its crown form, it gains a steel subtyping. This is such a plus for Zamazenta, which previously struggled with dragons. But now it has a new dragon resistance and a new charge move, Behemoth Bash, a steel move that has incredible damage per energy. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at crown form Zamazenta in the Master League. Great lead in game number 1 as Zamazenta stares down Kyurem Black. Opponent is going to save switch into Dusk main. Zamazenta banks an entire Behemoth Bash, and now in comes Kyurem. This is enough for the Sunsteel. This is a very risky no shield, but it pays off as it's only an Iron Head. Oh my goodness, if that was Sunsteel, that was game over for the Kyurem, but luckily an Iron Head will not set up a farm down for the Dusk main. Dusk main realizes this and will fire off Iron Head number 2. This is going to grab a shield, and now the opponent has to decide, is switch advantage worth giving up both their shields in the mid game? They say no. Fusion Bolt will pick up the KO. Back in comes the opponent's Kyurem, but they're actually on Dragon Tail. And Dragon Tail means that their fast move is resisted due to this new steel subtyping. Behemoth Bash from Zamazenta, big damage onto Kyurem. In the back is Palkia, and the opponent is just running ABA weak to crown form Zamazenta. Close combat is going to grab the final shield, and now Palkia is going to hit the field. Palkia will be shielding up as the opponent is going to be firing off a Spatial Rend, and now Palkia will look to try and farm this into Aqua Tail range. The opponent is now very, very low. Aqua Tail going to be double resisted, but it will be enough to pick up the knockout. In comes the Kyurem. The Dragon Tail will KO, but it just doesn't matter what the Kyurem throws here. Zamazenta is going to survive. They're going to go for a Fusion Bolt. Zamazenta hangs on, Metal Claws down, and takes the game 1 win. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Zamazenta into Meloetta. Now, Meloetta obviously runs Quick Attack, so its fast move is going to be resisted by this new Steel subtyping. Steel is arguably one of the best defensive typings in the game, and it also has incredibly good synergy with fighting. As we see Psyshock, what used to be super effective is now only neutral. So I really like this change to Zamazenta with the new crown form, because my goodness, it helps it defensively, and with Behemoth Bash, it also gets a really good steel move to help it offensively as well. Behemoth Bash is going to land, down goes Meloetta, in comes Annihilate, and we're going to see a pivot out, and Palkia is going to hit the field. Palkia will survive any one move here. Palkia is going to shield. It is the close combat. Palkia could have held on, but shielding a close combat and preserving health proves to be a good idea as the final Pokemon is revealed to be Zygarde. Zygarde going to be met with an Aqua Tail bait that grabs the shield. This can only be a Crunch or a Bulldoze. Palkia knows it can survive either and still make the Spatial Rend. And now the opponent has to decide, do they prioritize health on the Zygarde? They say yes, they're double shielding the Zygarde, and now this potentially sets up a free shock to land from the Kyurem. In comes the Kyurem. These Dragon Tails are adding up quite a bit, and Kyurem is going to invest the final shield of the match here as Zygarde goes for a Crunch. Zygarde continues to farm. We did see the debuff from the Crunch, only a 20% chance, but what a catch. Able to catch onto the Zamazenta. Crunch heavily resisted, not going to do much. Back in comes the Annihilate, and Kyurem will now go for the Fusion Bolt. Is Fusion Bolt going to be able to set up a Shadow Claw farm down here? The Fusion Bolt lands, and we see the farm down, and the free shock is loaded. So this is going to be good night, Zygarde. Back in comes the Zygarde, one shot by the free shock, and that is a good game. We've got the battle of the crown forms in the next match, Zamazenta versus Zacian. We see a safe switch, switching into the Kyurem. Kyurem taking super effective damage from the Metal Claw, but will be able to return fire and hit for neutral damage with Fusion Bolt. The Fusion Bolt is able to land. Zamazenta, my goodness, these Metal Claws add up quite a bit. Kyurem now well below half HP. Zacian is going to go for the Behemoth Blade, not wanting to debuff themselves with a close combat. And now we're going to see another Fusion Bolt, and the opponent is going to end up committing the shield. Can we see one final Fusion Bolt? The answer is no. Zacian winning charge attack priority. Behemoth Blade connects, and down goes Kyurem. But now in comes Zamazenta to get an energy head start, and Zamazenta is going to be answered with Kyogre. The Behemoth Bash is banked, in comes Palkia. The fact that a Kyogre is staying into Palkia means the opponent is in serious trouble. Kyogre goes for a Thunder. That is not going to do much. They're going to bring in Palkia, and now Palkia will get rocked by a Spatial Rend unless they give up the final shield. Spatial Rend is going to be shielded. Palkia is going to get farmed down, and now back in comes Zamazenta. Zamazenta, very happy to take damage here before it debuffs its defense with a close combat. Zamazenta farming up to the back-to-back close combats. This will be big damage onto the Palkia. Close combat is going to land. Palkia survives, but one Metal Claw after will pick up the KO. Back in comes Kyogre, and Kyogre should get knocked out here by back-to-back close combats. There's close combat number 1, that's gonna land, and there's close combat number 2. The Zamazenta with a -4 defense hangs on, KOs Kyogre, and takes the win. We move to the next match. Zamazenta staring down Palkia, a pretty nice matchup. Opponent is going to save switch into Solgaleo. This will be answered with the Shadow Claw Kyurem Black. Now, one worry about sending in Kyurem as opposed to sending in Palkia here is the fact that, obviously, Solgaleo has Iron Head. So, Iron Head hitting for super effective damage. That puts a lot of pressure onto Kyurem, as now Kyurem is already in the red health. Fusion Bolt lands, Kyurem unable to get that farm down and now forced to shield a Psychic Fangs, which is a little bit unfortunate. Can it survive? Yes, hanging on 1 HP and exiting with a free shock. In comes Palkia. Palkia will get absolutely smacked with a free shock unless they shield, which they do. And in the back, we see heatran. So the decision to bring in Kyurem actually ends up working out there. Looks like Schmiede was making the read that this was a Palkia bait out and that he needed to save his Palkia, because now Palkia will get to absolutely eviscerate Heatran. Heatran will get to go for the Stone Edge, but it's just too little too late with these double resisted fire spins doing less than nothing. Trainer, you have to at least build up to the Stone Edge. If you just go for the Magma Storm, that's never going to be shielded. In comes Palkia, and Palkia is about to get absolutely deleted. Spatial Rend, big damage. In comes Zamazenta sniping down with a Metal Claw, and the opponent is going to resign the match. We move to the next match, picking up a great lead, Zamazenta into Shadow Lugia. Opponent save switches into Solgaleo, and again we will see the response with the Kyurem Black. So making the read that this is a Palkia bait out, and that Palkia will have play against the backline as long as switch advantage can be kept. Fusion Bolt's going to be launched at the Solgaleo. Decision time for the opponent. How much are they willing to invest in the Solgaleo? And it looks like they are willing to invest heavy resources here. Kyurem going to be shielding up the Psychic Fangs. Kyurem just going to under-tap this Fusion Bolt, trying to put pressure on that final shield. The opponent is going to double shield for switch advantage, but now you can honestly just send in the Palkia and trust in the fact that 1-0 shield Zamazenta should do quite well. Opponent aggressively pivots into the Shadow Lugia, and now Lugia is going to be answered with Crown Form Zamazenta. Lugia obviously has this new move of Fly, but due to the Steel subtyping, again, it just helps Zamazenta so much defensively, because flying moves are now only neutral, so Fly is not a problem, and Lugia honestly has a really tough time here against Zamazenta. Zamazenta very comfortable with the no shield here as Lugia will go for another Fly. Zamazenta will get to farm up to 2 more Behemoth Bashes, guaranteeing that it will have one for whatever the opponent has in the back. Behemoth Bash is going to land. Opponent actually does not send in third. Instead, they're going to bring in Solgaleo. Solgaleo, close combat, picks up the KO. It's Rhyperior in the back, and the opponent will concede the match. What a dominant lead win. Zamazenta into Tapu Bulu. Opponent save switches into a Palkia, but this is by no means a good response. Palkia going to be met with a close combat here. This will inflict big damage if it lands, which it does. And now we will see the mirror. Immediate no shield, disrespecting Spatial Rend. That's going to land. That's big damage. And switch advantage has now been lost. However, switch advantage doesn't matter as much considering that it's a Shadow Claw Kyurem Black in the back. And Kyurem Black with energy is very, very flexible. Zamazenta going to go for a big Metal Claw farm down, exiting with so much energy. In comes Heatran, and oh boy, Heatran's gonna have to immediately give up both shields or just get deleted by same type attack bonus close combats. Zamazenta just gonna undertap here, not wanting to risk the Fire Spin KOing. The Fire Spin did KO, that was a good call, and now in comes Kyurem. Kyurem has a 2-0 shield advantage, so for the opponent, they know they're in trouble. They send in the Tapu Bulu, trying to outpace, but Trainer, you can't do that. Kyurem Black is too fast. That's a one-hit KO. Back in comes Heatran. Heatran gonna desperately try and make it to a Stone Edge here. Not only do they need to land a Stone Edge if they want to take the win, but on top of that, they need to successfully bait with the Magma Storm, and it's just not happening, as Kyurem now has the energy for another Fusion Bolt. So this is just a guaranteed shield, and the Fusion Bolt is clicked, and Kyurem Black, still a very deadly closer with Shadow Claw. We saw Dragon Tail earlier really struggle against the Crown form, but with Shadow Claw, I think Shadow Claw still has a lot of play. Leading Zamazenta into Kyurem White in the next match. Kyurem White taking super effective damage from these Metal Claws, but will hit hard with super effective Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare is going to be shielded. Zamazenta continuing to farm. There's going to be a pivot into Duskmane. Duskmane really not going to appreciate same type attack bonus close combat. It gets rocked, and there's more where that came from. Close combat number 2, ready and loaded as well. And just like that, Duskmane is forced to give back its shield advantage. In comes Kyurem. Kyurem potentially going to look for a 1-shield farm down here. Kyurem is going to go for the shield. It's a Dark Pulse bait, but the Duskmane does not get the Sunsteel Strike. And now, opponent is going to bring back in Kyurem White. But Kyurem White switched out after firing off that Fusion Flare, so they do not have any residual energy. They get nuked by a Free Shock, and in the back is Groudon. Oh my goodness, this is a risky bait. Throw an electric move at a Groudon, but it pays off. Groudon is going to commit the shield. There's the switch into Zamazenta, and Groudon will have to fire off a full Precipice Blades here to pick up the KO. Fire Punch just simply would not cut it. Zamazenta is too bulky, and now that they were forced to throw an entire Precipice Blades, they can't make a second one versus Kyurem, so Free Shock KOs the Groudon, and that's game over. Zamazenta versus Palkia, again a pretty solid lead for the Zamazenta. Opponent is going to save switch into Ho-Oh, and this is why Ho-Oh is not a safe switch, as Palkia is going to hit the field. Palkia more than happy to fire off the Aqua Tail here. Aqua Tail will deal some pretty solid chip damage to the Ho-Oh, and no one move will knock out here. So for Palkia, this move is always an O-Shield. That's a Solar Beam, and this will be a full farm down for the Palkia. Palkia getting to exit with energy, I think can make a Spatial Red versus the opponent as well, and does. Opponent trying to snipe down with Dragon Breath, but it's not to be. And now their Palkia is at 1 HP. In the back is a Shadow Lugia, and unfortunately for Lugia, this is just not a winning matchup. Lugia going to be hit with Behemoth Bash, so they're forced to commit a shield. This is the Shadow Lugia as well, but even if they are able to land an Aeroblast is still not going to be enough to pick up the knockout, but we're going to see a devilish catch here from Schmiede. Very nicely done, catching the Aeroblast onto the Kyurem. Kyurem is now going to get farmed down, but Zamazenta will be able to close out the game very comfortably here, as the opponent will never be able to make a catch unless they end up turn waiting, because as long as you throw on 147, and there is the wait attempt by the opponent, it's just never going to happen, and they will resign the match. We've got the battle of buffed Pokemon in the next match as Crown Form Zamazenta stares down Kingambit. Kingambit obviously with buffed Metal Sound. Here, Zamazenta is going to fire off Behemoth Bash, as it does not want to debuff its defense by 2 stages by firing off the double super effective close combat. Now this could potentially be a Focus Blast. It is a move Kingambit learns, and thank goodness that was shielded. Now Kingambit is just going to be so far behind. Opponent going to send in Zygarde. Zygarde will be chipped here with the Behemoth Bash, as there's not a clear switch in available in the backline. Behemoth Bash is going to land. Zamazenta keeps farming up so much energy, and now going to opt for the Close Combat. Close Combat, a very powerful charge attack. That's going to connect. Big damage into the Zygarde. Zygarde keeps farming, and this Zamazenta, purely off neutral damage, is making quick work of Zygarde. There's a switch into Palkia as the opponent is going to fire off their move. A nice Earthquake catch, and now back in comes Kingambit. Kingambit, this is probably going to be a foul play or a Dark Pulse. Oh, they actually full send the Focus Blast there. I'm a bit surprised, because now, again, they're going to be in a similar issue where they just don't have the energy to make a Focus Blast into the Zamazenta. Zamazenta will go for the Close Combat. That picks up the knockout. It's Kyogre in the back. Kyogre can't even farm down Zamazenta. Zamazenta will make 1 Close Combat for the road. That's big damage. In comes Kyurem, and the opponent should be immediately resigning, and there it is, right on schedule. We move to the next match. Zamazenta staring down Rhyperior. Opponent is going to switch out, sending in a Charm Primarina, and the fact that they switched out of the Rhyperior Zamazenta matchup does make me think that this very well could be double Charm. And if it's double Charm, obviously with 2 dragons in the back, that's not what you're hoping to see whatsoever. But Zamazenta already at a second Behemoth Bash here. This is going to land, getting that Primarina very low. Primarina going to fire off a Hydro Cannon. This will be no-shielded by the Zamazenta, and now we'll see the switch into Palkia. Palkia getting ahead on energy, trying to threaten the Rhyperior, but it is Double Charm, and Togekiss is going to hit the field. So Palkia was in a great position to handle Rhyperior, but unfortunately Rhyperior staying in the back. But nice thing for Palkia, it's going to make one final Aqua Tail, and this will potentially set up a farm down range for this Kyurem, as Kyurem can go for a one shield farm with the Shadow Claws and then just overwhelm Rhyperior with free shocks. Charmer throwing on alignment, not too surprising. They are going to be firing off their ancient power, fishing for a boost, and in comes Rhyperior. And Rhyperior is just too far behind. They have no ability to bait and win the game. Their only hope is to try and call a bait here, which they do. Down goes Double Charm, losing to Double Dragon, and that game is over. Terrible lead in the final match. Zamazenta is staring down Ho-Oh. The safe switch into Kyurem. Kyurem gonna get the Fusion Bolt, and Fusion Bolt will be actually caught. Oh my goodness, the opponent making a catch onto their own Kyurem, and that is a very devastating catch. Farming up here, not gonna make it to the free shock, instead just gonna settle for the Fusion Bolt. The Fusion Bolt does get shielded as the opponent realizes if the Fusion Bolt landed, then potentially Schmiede could go for a double shield and force alignment. Opponent will go for a Fusion Bolt of their own. It will not be enough to knock out. This Fusion Bolt will not KO either. Opponent is gonna survive. Aggressive pivot into the Palkia, getting the farm down. What do they have in the back? Apparently something that didn't want to see Palkia, and they will concede the match. All in all, Crown Form Zamazenta arrives to the Master League meta on day 1 as a meta threat. The defensive typing is so drastically improved by adding the steel subtyping, as so many of its previous tricky matchups like against Palkia and as well against flying types, suddenly it's fine because those weaknesses are neutralized by adding a steel typing. I really think that after Global Go Fest, we're going to see a lot of teams that are structured with a water type lead, the Crown Form Zacian as the safe switch, and the Crown Form Zamazenta as the closer. Just because Zacian obviously has incredible amounts of play as well. I think people are going to have a slight preference to the Zacian just because Fairy Steel, we know from Tinkaton, it's an incredibly OP typing, but I do very much think that there is a place for Crown Form Zamazenta in this meta. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.